Today our focus is on participant Muslims in the West. Who are they and what they believe in? Muslim presence in the West in the form of residence and citizenship is today permanent. Millions of Muslims live in Western countries as citizens. Many Muslims in the West believe that this presence must be justified on an Islamic basis. In the pre-modern period, it was relatively easy for religious communities, even if they are minorities, to function as a single entity under their own religious law. For example, Jews under Jewish law, Muslims under Islamic law, Christians under Christian law. This was because of the way religious communities were treated in great empires, where freedom to practice a religion under the guidance of their religious leaders was allowed. As with the Ottoman millet system, for instance. Religious communities were considered independent entities with their own norms, rules, and laws. In the modern period, the emergence of nation states based on the idea of common citizenship has changed that situation dramatically. Thus, Muslims in the West have to find ways of functioning as Muslims and also as citizens of Western countries. There are three broad categories into which Muslims living in the West can be placed as far as their approach to citizenship in Western countries and participation in society are concerned. First, those who live in the West but are reluctant to take part in Western society as full members of the society. I will call them isolationists. Second, those who have some admiration for Western values but are undecided as to whether they want to be full members of the society. Let me call them semi-isolationists. And the third, those who are Western in their makeup and have no difficulty in being Western and Muslim. Let me call them participants. The first category of Muslims, that is, isolationists, rely very heavily on the classical concept of Dar al-Harb, or abode of war. For them, Western countries are part of Dar al-Harb, and they consider residence in Western countries as very problematic. There are relatively few such Muslims in Western countries. The second category is what I call semi-isolationists. They have some concerns about living in the West, but they are not prepared to label the West as Dar al-Harb, or the abode of war. They still have some hesitation to become full participant citizens in Western countries. The third category is what I call participants. They do not consider classical Islamic legal concepts such as Dar al-Harb or abode of war as relevant to their circumstances. In the rest of this talk, let me focus on this category of Muslims, participants. This group of Muslims is an emerging and growing trend among Muslims in the West. So, who are the participants and what are their characteristics and views? Let me deal with the question, who are the participant Muslims in the West? For me, they represent what I refer to as the emerging Western tradition of Islam. This trend of Islam is coming to terms with a range of new issues, from democracy, human rights, gender equality, secular law, freedom of expression, freedom of religion, and equality before the law. This has no historical precedent as such, and they have no clear-cut methodology yet in dealing with a range of Islamic issues. It exists primarily in practice, and it is only recently, or relatively recently, Muslims in the West have started to develop methodological tools and principles in order to provide an intellectual foundation for this approach or for this trend. It is a product of a fusion of Islam with the Western environment and Western liberal democratic values. It has been most visible since the 1990s through the writings of a number of Muslim scholars based in the West, such as Tariq Ramadan, Bassam Tibi, and people like Muqtadir Khan, and of course many others. This Western tradition of Islam is being driven mostly by the indigenization of Islam in the West. It is espoused mostly by second or third generation Muslims, other indigenous Muslims, and of course converts to Islam from other systems of belief. Many professional and middle class Muslims also belong to this trend. Its frame of reference is the local environment of the West, and its inspiration comes from that context. What are the key characteristics of the participant Muslims? This Western tradition of Islam is challenging traditional understandings of a range of important issues in order to suit the social, cultural, political and intellectual context of Muslims in the West. These Muslims are using ijtihad to put forward bold solutions to contemporary concerns.